Hi everyone, how are you doing? Hope you are doing well. I'm in a fairly echoey environment, so apologies if the sound isn't as good as it could be on this video. I'm somewhere in public again, and people may or may not come in, so if they do and there's lots of jump cuts, I apologise. But I want to do a very quick video just to talk about something that I find legally really interesting, which in terms of your right to what would be considered some sort of essential utility. So what do we think we need to survive? Now, we all need food, we all need water, right? And most of us would think that we have a basic human right to food and water. Certainly in some countries it's impossible to cut the water supply off to people's houses if they don't pay the bill, for example, which I suppose is a good thing, otherwise anyone will get dysentery or something awful like that. But what if your right to the internet was also a perfectly protected thing? That you have an inalienable right to have access to all of your online services and everything you use every day. Now most people would think this is crazy. The internet, it's been around a while. Most of us, well, actually no, a lot of us can't remember life before the internet. But for those who can, it was this carefree place where everyone's walking around getting on with each other and nobody ever argued with anybody. That's not true, obviously. But it was a very different environment to what it is now. Now, the reason I ask this is because the right to internet, I do think, is somehow, we now need it. It's almost impossible to do a lot of things without online access. Certainly I've found in the last few weeks where I've been living a little bit like a digital nomad in some ways, that without internet access I'm a little bit lost. There are things that I physically can't easily do. You end up on the phone to someone, people can't respond. Certainly during this coronavirus times, which are still going, it's been easier to do things on an automated online basis than any other way. I wouldn't want to be going into a bank, for example. I wouldn't want to be calling my I suppose my electricity company, or indeed my internet company. I saw my internet's been cut off. But internet has become this thing where without it we're a bit lost. Look at, if you've got people who are of a certain age, I'm certainly older than this, but even I'm affected. If the internet goes down, there's a mild sense of panic that comes in. Now, internet's one thing, but imagine if you had an essential right to certain services on the internet. Now, if you're in a outsourcing, let's talk proper big law technology jobs for a moment. If you've hired someone to deliver a system to you, you will have in your contract what happens if that system goes down, if it's not available, if there's any reason why it can't be provided. There'll be terms and conditions whereby you may be able to sue them if they've failed to do something, or if they give you compensation if things aren't going according to plan. All these sorts of things. But what if this is a service that is something that is essentially free? Now, if you've listened to me before, you'll know that free doesn't mean free. Normally free is in return for data. But what if it's a service you use every single day and suddenly it stops being provided? Now, those who used MySpace, I don't know if they missed that when that stopped being provided, but imagine MySpace being switched off and it being the most important thing in the world. Bear with me on that one. If you've still got a MySpace account, by the way, go and have a look and see if the page is still there and if Tom is still your friend. I don't know what he's doing now. I might have to look him up after this. But the reason I ask is because we're obviously in this middle of, I guess you could call it a trade war, but I like to call it a tech war, where you essentially got the US and China arguing as to who has what data, what service can be accessed where. Huawei's stuck in the middle of it, which isn't great for them. But the big player at the moment is TikTok. Now, remember last week I was talking about how TikTok, President Trump has basically said that TikTok cannot be installed on US devices. We're waiting to see how that's going to work. But the news now is that TikTok are going to basically make a complaint against this. They're going to file a legal challenge saying that actually you're not allowed to do this. Now, this is quite interesting because think about it. In China, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be able to sue the president in China to say, I want WhatsApp and Facebook on my phone in China. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get very far in a court of law. So it's very interesting legally to see essentially an overseas company using the legal system, and this happens all the time, of a particular country to protect its own interests. I mean, this is kind of how the world works. But what is a bigger interest for me is WeChat. Now, I mentioned WeChat last week. I hinted at the fact that WeChat, Trump is going after that, saying it can't be installed on US devices. And there is now a challenge being made saying this is a breach of, I think, the First Amendment to the US Constitution because it impedes upon freedom of speech. Some WeChat users are saying without WeChat, they can't speak to their relatives in China. They can't do day-to-day business in China. I've said this before, if you don't have a WeChat account, it's very difficult to actually function in a basic level in China. You can walk around, you'll see people who will be begging on the streets. And you get beggars everywhere. I'm not saying they're just in China, I just want to stress this. But Chinese beggars accepting payments via WeChat Pay, which the first time I came across that, that was absolutely astonishing. But it's such a way of life there that actually taking away the access could be a complete disaster. Now, obviously, access is staying where it is in China. But if you're in the US and you want to contact your relatives back in China, what can you use? You can't WhatsApp them, because WhatsApp is essentially part of Facebook and is blocked. You can't use Facebook Messenger. You can't really use a Google Gmail account because Google is blocked as well. You could just use email, but if you want to do day-to-day chat or you want to do video chat, you are stuck with a WeChat account. And I'm in two minds here. Part of me is like, well, how dare someone say this country can not dictate what service is allowed in that state? So that's clearly me on the side of sort of internet sovereignty. And then part of me is saying, well, actually, no, we should be allowed to use whatever services we want, provided that you are entering into a relationship with those providing them, you know what you're getting yourself into. If you're selling all of your data to them in return for the service, then so be it. There should be absolute freedom. But where does this lie? Now, we'll have to see whether the case actually goes or whether it goes anywhere. It could just be bluster. I mean, so much of what's going on now, we're in a US election year, so things are, let's be honest, I've been looking at the post boxes that have been sealed up. Things are a little bit crazy. So we'll have to see whether there's any legs to this, whether we actually get a view. But it puts a whole new view on technology and sanctions and my whole feeling that perhaps technology should be free. It also means that you go from being in a position whereby you sue the provider, you make a claim against the provider, you go after the provider if whatever service you're using falls down. But imagine if a service falls down because of a state initiative, because a certain nation state says you can't use it anymore. Can you then go after the state? This is almost sort of William Gibson-esque cyberpunk stuff in terms of how kind of crazy it's all going. But it has massive, massive repercussions. Now, if you are a company, this looks like the Wild West at the moment. We have seen what seemed to be a fairly stable world of we can do all our business online, we can create apps, we can use whatever services we want, and we don't have to worry about interference from things other than our customers, our clients, or what have you, unless we're doing something really nefarious. We've seen that all be blown away. And it's created actually an awful environment both for US tech companies and for Chinese tech companies. I mean, they're both suffering because of this, not necessarily because of the economic sanctions that are coming out of it, but the sheer uncertainty that you don't know. I mean, if you were TikTok and you were thinking, I'm about to do an enormous IPO, I'm going to be huge, and then suddenly you find out, oh, now I'm not allowed to actually operate in the country, or I've got to sell myself to Microsoft or whoever, it is a real game changer. And it's like nothing we've ever seen before. The law aspect is not going to catch up quickly. When we start seeing essentially technology sanctions being used as a tool to manipulate markets, which I think is what's happening in terms of how this is working, and it's nothing new. I mean, states have been doing it around the world for a long time, but we've never seen it on such a public and such a massive scale. We've never seen it with apps and players as big as we have. Another thing that I will maybe talk about next week is the whole fight between Epic and Apple. If you're not sure about that, have a look at that. That's all relating to Fortnite on the App Store. But it's interesting how we're now seeing all of these borders, all of the technology borders that we had come down around us. All of these things, this free internet, this whole feeling that we could do what we wanted. And I remember thinking that the internet was a gate to a new world and messaging people on ICQ. That suddenly we may find that we're all locked into our own little nation states, little bubbles of what internet we can have. I'm hoping that's not the case. We will have to see, but it is going to be a very, very interesting time. Anyway, this was just a one-off bonus video because I find this so incredibly fascinating. It's like nothing else. I think in all my years as a technology lawyer, this is one of the biggest developments and one of the most interesting sort of geopolitical legal developments I've ever seen, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. I'm just hoping that everyone sees sense and we all end up with a good resolution. But anyway, I'll be back with a more detailed and longer video on something not too long from now. Probably either back in the office if the whole COVID thing ends, or I'll be back in my flat, or maybe, because I'm really loving this new sort of portable camera that I'm filming on. It does 4K and everything. I might even try and do it in other locations and go and see people. We will see what we can do. I'm not sure though if an on-location video would be what you want, because there aren't that many cool places I could go to. The wet market of Wan Chai with technology law might not work out. But on that positive note, have a wonderful rest of the week. I'll be back very, very soon. Take care.